What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and week 6 is in the books, which means it's time to look ahead to another week of fantasy football. We have week 7 coming up here, and we have a lot to talk about on today's waiver wire show. We have a lot of injuries with Kyren Williams down. You have Christian McCaffrey hurt. You have David Montgomery hurt. So we're going to talk through my must-target waiver wire ads for week 7 of the fantasy football season. We have a lot to get into today, so let's not waste any more time. If you enjoy, make sure you get down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go. Now, I usually split these guys up into priority ads and then just normal ads, but most of these guys are priority ads that I would sort of put a nice hefty bid on. Like, it's kind of a juicy week for waivers. Now, first up here, we have a pair of Los Angeles running backs. We have Zach Evans and Royce Freeman. Now, let's just talk about Zach Evans first, because I think that he's the most relevant of the two. He's the most fun. I will say he is I would call him kind of like a dynasty darling. Like, we did like him coming out of school. You can see here, I don't know why it's so massive, but you can see here, I mean, 6th round pick, but he did run like a 4.5, 208 pounds. He could catch passes, 6% college target share, 6.8 college yards per carry. Super, super explosive. And that's kind of the selling point with Zach Evans, is that he is a really good pure runner, where if we look there, he is in the 95th percentile for yards at the contact per attempt. So this is just a chart, I believe, from Arjun Menon on Twitter, and it just breaks down every college prospect running back from this class and just kind of where they rank percentile-wise in yards at the contact per attempt. Zach Evans, 95th percentile. Missed tackles forced per attempt, only 73rd percentile, but then explosive run rate, 94th percentile. Yards per out run, 89th percentile. So he's all around a very good running back on a per-touch basis. He's someone that had a lot of juice. He was a 5-star recruit coming out, someone that a lot of Devy guys, where Devy are guys that draft players straight out of high school, they were big on Zach Evans. He goes to TCU. He battles with Kendre Miller. He goes to Ole Miss. He battles with a kid who you're going to know about in like 2 years, Quinshon Judkins. So he never really was a workhorse in college, but someone that I think 6th-round draft capital was lower than a lot of people expected him to go. So Zach Evans is a really fun prospect, and now you have the Rams backfield wide open, where Kyren Williams' MRI just revealed an ankle sprain, or revealed just an ankle sprain that may knock him out this week. It seems like Kyren Williams is going to miss 1 to 2 weeks here. And then the next guy up is Ronnie Rivers, who has a grade 3 PCL sprain. He's out 4 to 5 weeks. So this is a team that feeds their number one running back. We've seen it all year, where Kyren Williams isn't like, I know he just came off a big game, but he's not spectacular in any sense of the word. He's a day 3 running back, 4.6 speed, undersized out of Notre Dame. He's a fine running back, but he's not anything crazy. But Sean McVay does really lean on one guy usually, and if Zach Evans finds himself in that role, he's going to be in the mix to be an RB2 every week that Kyren Williams is out. Now, the issue is, if Zach Evans was so good, how come he couldn't beat out Ronnie Rivers? And that's a fair question. And that's kind of the question I see myself asking, because Zach Evans, we know he has juice, right? He's the young guy in there, and still McVay has preferred to go with Ronnie Rivers and Kyren Williams. He's kind of, average running backs. It almost seems to me like Sean McVay prefers his running backs to just not screw up, if that makes sense. Like, he almost just wants a steady Eddie veteran type of presence. And that's why I think Royce Freeman is also very much worth a peek. Where Zach Evans, I think, would be my main waiver wire ad, but I wouldn't go all out crazy for Zach Evans. It could be a similar DeMercado situation, and it wouldn't shock me. Royce Freeman's on the practice squad, super productive out of Oregon, could catch passes, 238 pounds here, 6 foot, big back. He can do pass protection. He can catch passes. He caught a ton of passes at Oregon. Didn't really work out in the NFL, but he was a 3rd-round pick. And it wouldn't shock me if he was just one of these guys that McVay uses. We've seen him make Malcolm Brown startable in fantasy. We've seen him make Darrell Henderson startable in fantasy. Cam Akers, 2 guys who are pretty much, on the fringes of the NFL a year later. So it wouldn't shock me if he used like the most boring guy possible in the backfield. So something to look out for. Again, I wouldn't go all out on Zach Evans. Royce Freeman, definitely worth a pickup. Zach Evans also worth probably over 15% of your budget, but again, I wouldn't go like 100% and think that he's going to be the one-for-one replacement to Kyren Williams. Now, after that, we have a pair of 49ers running backs because we have another injury. We were talking about it earlier. We have Christian McCaffrey. He goes down. Christian McCaffrey, oblique injury. This is an excerpt from 4 for 4. They have an injury report every week. I believe Jeff Mueller writes the column. It's really, really good. He kind of just talks through what the injuries are, the projected timetables. While the injury knocked out Christian McCaffrey from the game, he was notably moving quickly, jumping up and down, twisting, trying to work it out. The challenge for us, 49ers play on Monday night, so hopefully we hear about his status by Saturday or Sunday for Week 7. Otherwise, we'll have to guess on availability. Seems like he's going to be out 1 week at most. Oblique injuries aren't super intense, so this is going to be a very short-term option here, right? Like maybe you have somebody on bye, maybe you have like a Joe Mixon on bye, maybe you have Breece Hall on bye and you need like a 1 week fill-in. I don't mind taking a shot at the 49ers running backs. My preferred option of the two would be Jordan Mason. I've seen guys now, I don't know how much weight you want to put on 49ers beat reporters and just kind of the vibes that I sort of hear on Twitter from people that are either beat reporters for the Niners or 49ers fans. Seems like a lot of people think that Jordan Mason here has overtaken Elijah Mitchell. Now, of course, the two waiver wire ads we're talking about here, Jordan Mason and Elijah Mitchell. My preferred option would be Jordan Mason here, where we see after the McCaffrey injury, Mason gets 62% of the snaps. He gets the inside the 10 carry, and then Elijah Mitchell is just 24%. So it seems like Jordan Mason might have passed him here. Jordan Mason also had 5 carries for 27 yards and a touchdown, which is fine, right? It's like over 5 yards per carry. It's a small sample, but then you have Elijah Mitchell, who had 2 carries for -3 yards, no touchdowns. So, I mean, Jordan Mason, again, we're talking small sample here, but he was better. So maybe they just sort of ride the hot hand. Jordan Mason also ran more routes. He took more carries than Elijah Mitchell. So for me, he's a preferred option, but Elijah Mitchell also not a bad play this week, right? I think I'll probably have Jordan Mason as like a borderline RB2, and then I'll probably have Elijah Mitchell flirting with like the top 40 running backs this week. But again, you could be so down bad. You just have to make it work. Maybe you have like Kyren Williams and Joe Mixon and Breece Hall. Like you can find yourself in a pretty tough situation this week with all the running backs hurt and all the buys. So moving on from that, we have Craig Reynolds here, which again, beneficiary of another injury. We have David Montgomery go down, and it seems like he's going to miss 7, like pretty much a lock to miss Week 7, and then it's up in the air on if he'll miss Week 8. Now, what Jeff Mueller says in this 4for4 article, David Montgomery has a left rib injury. His return to play is all dependent on his level of pain and bruising. X-rays came back negative, so we know there is no fracture. One variable that cannot be predicted that if pain persists, the Lions could be conservative and keep him out until their Week 9 bye, leading to a Week 10 return. So that's sort of the concern is they have a Week 9 bye, and it kind of makes sense for them to keep him out Week 9, give him like, this entire 3 to 4 weeks to actually heal up, because it seems like, got hurt earlier in the year. He missed a game. He got hurt again. Maybe they kind of want to be a little bit more cautious, but also Montgomery's been their most reliable runner, so who knows. But we have Craig Reynolds, who's going to be locked into RB2 status this week if Jahmyr Gibbs misses another week with injury. So that's kind of the, there's a lot of variables at stake here, like Zach Evans, rookie. Is McVay going to trust him? The other one is McCaffrey's even going to miss a week. Now this one is, will Jahmyr Gibbs play? Because if Jahmyr Gibbs plays, Craig Reynolds isn't all that interesting. Now, I will say Jahmyr Gibbs has a hamstring injury. We've talked with Tom Christ, Doctor of Physical Therapy. We talk with him once a week. If you haven't checked out that video, make sure you do. Like every Saturday, I bring on Tom Christ. He's a Doctor of Physical Therapy, works with the fantasy injury team. They have a cool website, and we just kind of break down what's going on. Based on his research, hamstrings don't really affect running backs too much, but a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, who plays so much wide receiver and is a speed back, get into top speeds, hamstring is an issue. He didn't even really seem close to playing this week. Like he never practiced. It never seemed like it was up in the air whether Gibbs would play. He was just ruled out. So that tells me that he's a true toss-up to play in Week 7 now. So I don't mind grabbing Craig Reynolds and sort of taking the gamble that Gibbs doesn't play, because if Gibbs misses, Craig Reynolds, you can fire him up as an RB2 in his absence. I also think, funny enough, we're going to put our hand in the dirt here for a second. I do think, everybody saw the block for Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think Craig Williams probably earned himself like more touches and more trust after that big play. I saw a clip that's been going around too where they were like debating cutting him, and they were just like, no, like this guy represents what our team is. So this is the split last time that Gibbs and Craig Reynolds suited up. This was Week 3 when David Montgomery was hurt, and Craig Reynolds was a non-factor. We're talking 13% of the rush attempts, 26% of the routes. 2 PPR points. That's just not going to do it. Gibbs was the lead guy. But what I'm trying to say is that in this situation, Gibbs is coming off injury. Craig Reynolds is coming off a week where he had this massive block that everybody's talking about. It wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me at all if they treated Craig Reynolds straight up like David Montgomery this week and gave him 12 12 to 15 carries. Like it really wouldn't shock me a ton. Now I will say they're playing in Baltimore. That's a really tough defense. But if Gibbs plays, Craig Reynolds probably flirts with he's probably like somewhere in the RB 30 to 40 range for me. If Gibbs does not suit up, then he's probably somewhere in the RB 20 to 30 range for me. So do with that as you will. Now our next ad here is Roschon Johnson. He's somehow, some way not owned in 50% of ESPN leagues. It's pretty simple with Roschon Johnson. Khalil Herbert's going to be out for another 3 to 4 weeks here, and Roschon Johnson was the preferred running back over D'Onta Foreman. Roschon Johnson's in clear concussion protocol. D'Onta Foreman was the lead back last week, but it wouldn't shock me if Roschon Johnson still had his seat warmed for him to be the 1A to D'Onta Foreman's 1B. And in that situation, it's interesting. Now, I will say it's a little bit of a damper that Justin Fields is hurt, right? He dislocated his thumb on his throwing hand, which is brutal. That hurts the entire offense a ton, right? Justin Fields was moving the ball. We saw it versus Washington. We saw it the game before that. He was looking good. Now everything's kind of up in the air. I'll still say, we saw with Chuba Hubbard last week. Even if the offense is a dumpster fire, if you can find yourself as a lead back on an NFL offense in this running back landscape right now where everyone's hurt or on bye, they're probably startable. So I don't mind Roschon Johnson, right? We had like a 60-40 split for D'Onta Foreman this week. You had Darrington Evans at 37% of the snaps. D'Onta Foreman at 60%. Now, D'Onta Foreman getting 8 of 15 long down and distance snaps tells me that Roschon Johnson is going to slot in and take pretty much everything that Darrington Evans had, plus long down and distance stuff. And then I think he's probably the lead back here, where Foreman probably reverts to like 40%, mixing in on goal line and short yardage and like between the tackles rushes. So that's kind of an interesting role. Roschon Johnson, if he plays this week, probably in the mix right around like RB 30 when I do my weekly rankings. Now, next up, our fifth must-add waiver wire target, we have Kareem Hunt here. He kind of had a little bit of a backfield takeover this week. I wouldn't call it a complete takeover, right? You have Jerome Ford still at 51% of the snaps, 52% of the rush attempts, but Kareem Hunt comes out here with 37% of the snaps, 36% of the rush attempts, 32% of the routes. You know, he was decent this week. We had 16 PPR points. He was the RB10, and it wouldn't shock me. You know, he's already familiar with this system, right? Like him and Kevin Stefanski have been together for the previous 3 years with Nick Chubb, and I think kind of what I'd expect moving forward is Jerome Ford will be in his pretty much the Nick Chubb role. Kareem Hunt will be in the Kareem Hunt role from a few years ago, but Jerome Ford isn't Nick Chubb. So some of that Nick Chubb work is going to spill over into Kareem Hunt as well. I would almost treat it like a pure 50-50, but in an offense that's sort of been run heavy and kind of the identity of this team has been relying on defense, I don't hate that. Kareem Hunt's probably like an RB3 moving forward, which again, in the current landscape of things, is great. Now, after that, we have Wan'Dale Robinson, and Wan'Dale Robinson is really climbing up the routes here. Now, I will say a little bonus. This is a screenshot from yesterday's Top 10 Lessons Learned. Jalin Hyatt's a fun stash as well. We always talk about rookie wide receivers being late season hammers, right? We've seen it with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Christian Watson and Brandon Ayuk, A.J. Brown. The list goes on, even Darius Slayton and Terry McLaurin. Wan'Dale Robinson, man, he's had over 20% target share in each of his last 3 games. His route percentage keeps going up. Now, week 5, he had a concussion. That's why his routes didn't go up, but he commands targets. He's coming off a week where he had 14.2 PPR points, and he plays Washington this week, where Drake London went off against Washington, DJ Moore went off against Washington, A.J. Brown went off against Washington. Everybody's killing Washington's secondary. So I don't mind Wan'Dale Robinson in that spot. He's, to me, it's tough. He had 7.75 yards per catch this past week. His ADOT is so low that, even in an 8-catch game, you're going to get, 14 PPR points, but it's just kind of that's sort of fine. If you just need a bye week fill-in, that's not the end of the world. So Wan'Dale Robinson, a decent pickup there. Now, we also have some rookie wide receivers to talk through, where first up we have Josh Downs. Again, rookie wide receivers breed upside. They smashed on the stretch of an NFL season, and Josh Downs is no different here. Now, his pass snap percentage, so this is the rookie wide receiver report. You can see Josh Downs is going to be between Demario Douglas and Jaden Reed. We have their pass snap percentage, or just how often are they on the field for passing downs. That's all we care about. Target per out run, anything over 20% is good. Yards per out run, anything over 2 is elite. PFF grade, anything over 80 is elite. Now, Josh Downs doesn't hit any of those markers, but he's been scoring PPR points, which is what we're looking for. He had 13.1 PPR points. He had 8 targets this week, which is amazing, but that was just 5 catches, 21 yards, and a touchdown. He had a low ADOT this week, but Minshew has had games where Downs has been more of a downfield guy. I think that the whole passing game kind of just struggled this week versus the Jaguars, but you have Josh Downs here, who now we have in 2 games where Anthony Richardson played 50% or more of the snaps. Josh Downs had 5.7 PPR points in the 4 games without Anthony Richardson, or where Anthony Richardson didn't play more than half of the game. You now have Josh Downs at 12.6 points per game. 12.6 points a game is a nice, solid flex. He came through for you if you needed a flex play this week anyways. So Josh Downs is probably going to be doing more of that in the future. Now, after that, we have another rookie wide receiver here. We have Rashee Rice, who's at the top of this leaderboard. 80-plus PFF grade, 2+ yards per route run, 30% target per route run, elite numbers across the board. Now, when the routes go up, those numbers will come down, but he's at least showing that he is a player. He's a guy, right? He's talented. He is showing a lot more than a lot of our darlings like Jackson Smith-Njigba and Quentin Johnson are showing at this current juncture, if you will. Now, Rashee Rice's issue is that he's not getting on the field. 50% of the pass snaps is not someone you can start in fantasy, but Justin Watson's hurt. Rashee Rice is a rookie that can keep earning more playing time, and if he can get to 80% plus, he becomes someone you can start every single week who's attached to Patrick Mahomes and has league-winning upside. So Rashee Rice, I think, is a must-stash if you're in a spot where you don't need somebody to start right away. Now, after that, we have someone that if you do need to start right away, you can, and that'd be Curtis Samuel. He has 3 straight games now of 14-plus PPR points. He gets carries, he gets targets, he has a bunch of different avenues. 2 scoring PPR points. He's the wide receiver 24 on the year so far. He gets the Giants this week, which is a really light, easy matchup here. So Curtis Samuel, in a world where Jahan Dotson is doing absolutely nothing week in and week out, Curtis Samuel's a flex play until Jahan Dotson decides to play wide receiver. Then we have Kendrick Bourne, who's he's so weird, man. Like, Belichick sometimes loves to use Kendrick Bourne, and sometimes he doesn't. Like 93% of the routes in week 1, 21% of the targets, boom. That's a flex play. Then we have week 2, 55%, 73%, 59%. Then the last 2 weeks, 20% plus target share, 90% plus routes. So if that sticks in any capacity, even on what's been a dumpster fire team this year, that's going to be a flex play. So just keep an eye out on those routes and those targets. But for now, I'd be comfortable saying if you're down bad, bye weeks, et cetera, Kendrick Bourne is a fine, like, desperation start. And then we have a bonus that I want to talk about. Michael Mayer, he's a fun one. Rookie, he could be the next, Sam Laporta here, like sort of a poor man Sam Laporta. He has had weeks 4 through 6, 30% of the routes, then 44% of the routes, and 67%. He's just slowly been taking over the starting job. He had a good week this past week where he had a 21% target share, a 27% target per run is amazing. He was a mega producer at Notre Dame where he produced all 3 years. A great blocker, great pass catcher. He just had 6 targets, 5 catches for 75 yards. 15 yards per catch is amazing. Like, he is a big play, target hog, tight end with a ton of upside. So Michael Mayer, not a bad stash at all. You can almost play right away. I mean, he gets Chicago this week. Where as long as Jimmy Garoppolo gets healthy, then you're going to be in a good spot with Michael Mayer. Now, that is going to do it for us today. I do want to let you guys know, literally as soon as I post this video to go live, I'm going to go finish up my waiver wire article where I break down every single week on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. I break down my top 10 to 15 running backs, my top 10 to 15 wide receivers, tight ends, quarterbacks. I outline exactly how much fab I'm bidding on those guys and reasoning and stat nuggets underneath them. I think it's one of the more useful waiver wire articles in all of the land. So that's patreon.com/Ron Stewart. You can find that in the description, comment section down below, all of that good stuff. And if not, man, just subscribe, leave a like, and I will see you guys in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like